Hello everybody and welcome to the very first Q&A video I'm doing. I said I would do, I had a video out 2 days ago and I said, ask me some questions and I'll answer them for you so that I had some, some content in between the 3 videos that I'm working on. Quick update on that, all of the scripts are done on those and I'm finally recording the audio. The first of the 3, I'm not sure, it's probably going to be the War Crimes review. It'll be out before the next week is over, so look forward to that. Alright, so let's get into the questions. I'm just taking them straight from the comments. Some I haven't even totally read, but I'm looking at my screen right here. Okay, I'm just doing them in order. First question I got from Tolvo. He asked, are there any clear statements in the novel, War Crimes, about the current politics between the Horde and the Alliance? Are they in a fragile truce? Are they working with each other to rebuild? Is one side clearly in the advantage politically in the novel, etc.? Alright, so in War Crimes, the current politics between the Horde and the Alliance, there is a very, very, very uneasy truce that is currently happening, but they are still quite hostile personality-wise to one another. As you're going to see in the synopsis that I give, each side, the Horde has to choose a defender to argue for a lenient punishment for Garrosh, while the Alliance picks an accuser to have a more stringent, sentence. And the Alliance tries to put up Varian, and the Horde and media are like, no, we're going to use our one veto to get rid of him, even though it ends up kind of being a trick by the Alliance, because they were planning on having Tauren the whole time. But that just shows how hostile things are still towards one another, as well as the fact that I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's really not. We already knew that from the previews, if you have read it on any of them. So here you go, another little mini spoiler for War Crimes. During the beginning of Tauren's arguments about Garrosh, she's actually her goal at first is to try and condemn the Orcs as a whole. So they're still very, very hostile towards one another until towards the end of the book, which I'll get into later. But they definitely are. Are they working with each other to rebuild? Absolutely not. There's no mention that the Alliance, who is very obviously the superior faction, coming out of the Siege of Orgrimmar, because the Horde is still working. The Horde's basically still reeling from what Garrosh had done. There's not a lot explained about this, but just from the aura of how everything was written in the book and how I imagined it, and it's not just because I'm an Alliance fan, it really did seem like the Horde were the underdogs. So yeah, I think that's everything. Politics, Horde, and Alliance, real truce. Yeah, okay. And as Calyx C responded to Tolvo, she said, if you like Sylvana, she gets a lot of character development in there too, and she does, but it's not really related to the Horde and the Alliance. It's more her and Varisa they have a subplot. So there you go. Next question, Cheese for Everyone, great name by the way, has 2 questions. First, what is your fascination with Eggman? Let me stop you right there. It's Dr. Robotnik, by the way. I refuse to acknowledge the American or English version of Sonic where he's Dr. Eggman, because that's stupid. That's a stupid name. And what my fascination is with Dr. Robotnik, Sonic, as I'm going to bring up in another question later on about video games when I was a kid, Sonic was, if not the most, then one of the most games franchises that I played when I was little. I had a Sega Genesis instead of a NES or an SNES. My first console was a Genesis. And I played the shit out of Sonic. Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, even Sonic 3D Blast, I believe it was called, for the Genesis. So yeah, I really like Dr. Eggman. I think he's a cool villain, and I believe, I don't really know if this is 100% true, but I think this is how I came to the love that I have for villains who aren't just like physically intimidating, who actually are smart. The caveat is that Robotnik is often shown to be smart, but also dumb. But the point stands nonetheless that I really have liked villains who are intelligent instead of just like muscly and strong. And I think Dr. Robotnik is the first one that I can remember from a game series that I've really liked. So there you go. Next question. Oh, it's the same question. The same person. What are some of your childhood defining games? Sonic, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 3. Other than that, I played a shit ton of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Melee is the second one, right? Yeah. Not Brawl. I didn't play much. The original one, so just Super Smash Bros. I didn't play much of the first one, but I did play a lot of the GameCube one Melee, an obscene amount, to the point that I got Mewtwo, who, if you guys remember, you can only unlock Mewtwo in Melee by playing like 200 hours of the game. I got him within like a month of the game coming out. So my friends and I, we would play constantly. They'd come over, spend the night when we were like 9, 10, 11 years old, and just play like all night long, and then like 6 a.m. finally go to bed. So, other than that, what else? Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie from the N64. Very, very memorable. I played those so many times. Actually, to the point that if I could move my camera, but I can't, I'm replaying Banjo-Tooie right now on my N64. So, I think that's good enough, yeah. Alright, Vandalia asks, I'm working on an episode of his podcast. He's looking for a guest. Oh, he's looking for me. Vandalia, perhaps one day, but right now I am not interested in guest hosting your podcast, mainly because I'm very busy. I'm trying to figure out what weight there's lower, and I'm trying to keep my channel up to date. So, that wasn't really a question. Next question is from Necrogangster, who has a great name. He has 2 questions. The first one is, if it was up to you to decide where would you take us lore-wise in the next 3 expansions, including Warlords of Draenor patch cycle. And he says making Warlords of Draenor the last one doesn't count. So, I assume that means I have to make... I can't discount Warlords of Draenor. I can't make that not an expansion. Otherwise I would. So, Warlords of Draenor happens. Here's my prediction. I don't know if this is... I have no evidence supporting this is correct. The end of Warlords of Draenor is going to be Gul'dan with the Burning Legion. We're going to stop them in that universe. And then that storyline's going to halt for a little bit. Wrathion's going to dovetail into saying, look, the Legion's going to return at some point because look how dangerous they are in this universe. And then we're going to have a break. And then we're going to return to Azeroth, and we're going to deal with the Infinite Dragon fight. That's going to be the first expansion. I don't know. I'm hesitant to say I want a time-traveling expansion, but I think if they did it right, it could be really, really cool. So I'm going to say the first expansion after Warlords is a time-traveling one, focused almost primarily with the Infinite Dragonflight, who is becoming a player again in the lore, without spoiling anything. I'll just say that. They're in War Crimes, and they're also in Warlords of Draenor. So, first expansion is going to be a time-traveling one. Perhaps we will go into the future to see Azeroth. Maybe we go into the future to a destroyed Azeroth, and we're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. And we spend the majority of that time in the future trying to figure out things so we can come to the past and stop it. I think that would be a cool concept. It'd be kind of like, you know, the End Time 5-man made into an expansion, which I think would be nifty. So that'd be the first one. After that, we would solve all those problems, and then after we come home to Azeroth and prevent them from happening, that's when Azshara and the Naga attack, because we've been preoccupied for so long after we've seen her last, which was in, Cataclysm? So we had Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, then the time-traveling expansion. We gave her and the Naga 3 expansions to prepare, and while we are not taking the Naga seriously as a threat, they come and attack. So that's the second expansion, the Underwater, the Azshara, the Naga expansion, what have you. And they could do a lot of stuff with that, with the Old Gods and N'Zoth and all of that craziness, but regardless, I think in that expansion, Azshara would have to be the expansion boss. And that would dovetail into the last expansion, which I think would be the Burning Legion. Full force, in our universe, comes to attack Azeroth. After we defend ourselves, we go out into space to Argus to stop them. That would be the third expansion. We would repel the Legion for a little while, kind of like how the Iron Horde, we're going to deal with them. We're going to repel, and then we're going to go into their universe and cut off the portal and then deal with all of it. That's how I think Argus was going to work. The Burning Legion's going to attack, we're going to repel it, we're going to go somehow to Argus, stop them from getting through, and then we're going to deal with shit on there. Illyria and Terralion will finally be in the game. Whether they'll be Horde or Alliance or neutral remains to be seen, knowing Blizzard, but... So yeah, so we have Warlords of Draenor, and then we have the Infinite Dragonflight expansion, the Azshara expansion, and then the final Burning Legion expansion. So Necro had another question. Do you think the stuff from the books, like Garrosh's trial, should be included in the game? Normally, I would say no for most of the books. This book, I actually think it should. And it's because I think... let's compare it to something like Twilight of the Aspects, where there are a lot of things happening all across the world in a very large space. It would make it very hard for them to put it in the game without it just being the expansion itself. Compare that to War Crimes, where most of the story takes place in the Temple of the White Tiger, but Sylvanas and Veresa's kinds of takes place in Tirisfal and Undercity, so we can bounce back and forth between there. How I think they could do it really easily is the trial is split up into days, and there's I think there's 9 days total, and then the end of the book happens. I think they could do a solo scenario for each day, kind of like how the Isle of Thunder had their solo scenarios, and they could split it up so each day has its own scenario, and you can go there and show up and watch it, because pretty much every day something happens that players could interact with. There are visions that are shown each day. There's kind of like chaotic stuff that happens. So every scenario would have something going on. It wouldn't just be the players sitting there just watching text go by. Which, by the way, if they also did this, they'd have to voice it. It would be a mandatory thing for it to be fully voiced. But I think War Crimes, they could really easily translate that into the game if they wanted to take the amount of time to develop it to do that. I don't think it would be as much as, I say, Twilight of the Aspects, but, have, maybe a 10 solo scenario story, one for each day, and then the final one is the conclusion event that happens at the end of the book that I'm not going to spoil, but is fucking awesome. It is so cool. So yeah, I think they could do that. Necro ended his question by inserting his own thoughts. He says, I think it would be awesome and provide people who don't buy the books with some backstory for stuff, and it could provide epic in-game moments, assuming it's not a short scenario with the Horde getting half the story and the Alliance getting the other half like Theramore. I remember people who didn't read through all Twilight of the Aspects, you brought it up yourself, and when 4.2 came out, they were like, what the fuck, why is Thrall suddenly so important, and why is he buddies with the Aspects? That's a great point, and that's why I think they could actually do War Crimes really easily. I do kind of think they need to show something from the book. They need to show Garrosh escaping. I don't think it's enough just for them to say, Mop ended, Garrosh wasn't killed, and then Warlords where he's free. I think they do need to somehow show in the game that he was gone. Maybe they'll have it in the expansion pre-event. Who knows? But, yeah. So, next question. Cian Rycroft, asks two things. Do you remember any specific moments from either WoW or any other game where you sat in awe at what was happening? And the second one is, are you going to be playing WildStar? Excuse me, she said she played the beta, and it's wonderful. I'll answer that one first. Yes and no to WildStar. I've been burned too many times by new MMOs. SWTOR, Guild Wars 2 is a good example. Elder Scrolls Online, to the point that I have not pre-ordered WildStar. I don't plan on pre-ordering WildStar. I don't plan getting it when it comes out. I'm going to give it about a month. See how the game actually is in its totality, read some reviews, and then I will get it if it's good. I know a lot of my friends are getting it. Jan is getting it. Howie's getting it. Dunn probably will get it because the other two got it. But I'm not going to drop the money for the game and the subscription cost unless I know it's a solid title. Some people have told me it has. I've played the beta. I'm kind of ambivalent toward it. There are some things I like and some things I don't like. So I'm just going to wait. So that's the WildStar question. As to any specific gaming moments, there are quite a few. For World of Warcraft in particular, I brought this up somewhere. I think it was on But Wait, There's Lore. It might have been on 5 Gaming Things. But in Vanilla, the Alliance had a quest chain called The Great Masquerade, where my sister's screaming in the background because she is very respectful. But anyway, in the, I lost my train of thought. In Vanilla, there was a quest chain for the Alliance called The Great Masquerade, where you uncovered the fact that Lady Katrana Prestor was Onyxia. And back then, I wasn't really big into the story in Vanilla. That didn't really happen until halfway through, like, Burning Crusade, where I got interested in it. But I remember playing that quest chain, the actual quest where you're going into Stormwind with Marshall Windsor, or whatever, I think that was his name, Marshall Windsor, and and you march with him up into the throne room, and he's like monologuing, like, we're not going to be afraid of our own government, and then he like ends the statement with, show yourself, Onyxia, and I was like, holy fuck, it's Onyxia, and then she transforms into the dragon, and all her guards become dragons, and everyone's fighting, and Bolvar's fighting Onyxia, and I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? That was probably the best moment, besides the Wrathgate, in WoW that I have ever experienced. As for other games, the first thing that comes to my mind immediately is Final Fantasy X, the ending of that. I'm not going to spoil it because I know the HD remake is out and people are playing it for the first time. But the end of that, where you learn all the stuff that happens in the game, you learn everything that happens at the end and how the end happens with the main character, what happens to him. The first time I played that, it was so like touching because it's a sad ending. I guess a little bit of a spoiler alert. When I first played it, I was like 11 or 12. I cried. It was very sad, and that still sticks to me as being how much a game can impact me and my feelings, and I just freaking love it. It was great. So, 2 questions left. Last one is Captain Ginyu, the Ginyu Force, Ginyu Squad. I haven't seen DBZ in a while. He asks, though it may seem nosy, what subject grade level do you teach? I remember you talking about being a teacher. Yes and no is my answer to that. Technically, I am not currently, but I have student taught before, and I'm about a semester and a half away from being able to actually teach full time. So I have taught before, but I'm not right now. And that's basically it. It's high school math. So, there you go. Last question is from KLXC. She said, I'm assuming it's a she, your avatar is female, so sorry if you're a guy. If you were to design a faction leader for both the Alliance and the Horde, what would they be like? What would their classes be, personalities? Whether they be an existing lore character or completely created is up to you. So, I'm guessing the question is, the Alliance, one faction leader for the entire Alliance. And right there I kind of am like, the Alliance isn't like that, though. For the Horde, I could say who else could be War Chief. I would say Lorthamar in an instant. I thought he should have been War Chief all along. His development in Mists of Pandaria is fantastic, and it kind of throws a huge wrench into people who say that Blizzard can't like subtly make a character interesting, because they did that with both Lorthamar and Wrathion. I would say Lorthamar. If the Alliance, I can't do that, because the Alliance doesn't have one overarching leader, based on how just they function as a faction. That's the whole reason that the whole High King variant thing kind of fizzled out, because they tried to make him both a military commander and like the Alliance's war chief, and it just didn't work, because that's not how they function. So I'm going to change your question and say, other than the current leaders of each faction for the Alliance and Horde, who could then be leading them instead? So, for example, instead of Varian Rin, who would be leading the Alliance of Stormwind? Who would I like to see? If somehow Varian and Anduin both die, I want Sky Admiral Rogers to be the leader of the Alliance, of the humans. Because one problem I have with War Crimes, another little mini spoiler for War Crimes, so skip like 20 seconds when I start talking. They kind of toned back Jaina's hatred of the Horde at the end of War Crimes, and it kind of pisses me off that they did that, because the Alliance needs... I feel like the Alliance justifiably should still be angry at the Horde. There's like no real resolution. People should probably be pissed that Varian kind of just was like, okay, bye, and left Orgrimmar, but I could rant about that for a while. So I think Sky Admiral Rogers would be a good faction leader for the humans, because she's passionate about her people, like Varian and Anduin, but she also is not going to take no shit from them like Varian used to be, and like how Jaina used to be. So that's the humans. For the Gnomes are hard, because Gnomes are like the Forsaken. They only really have one really interesting character in their faction, and it's Mechatork and Sylvanas. But I can't even think of any other important Gnome characters off the top of my head. Let's real-time WoWPDing with Necroxis. Let's take a look at other Gnome characters, because like they're just not coming to me right now. Notable Gnomes. Thermoplug, he can't be. He's a villain, so he's not going to be one. I guess Tinkmaster Overspark, I forgot about him. He could be interesting, but I feel like instead of getting a new faction leader, they really need to develop Mechatork more, because we only get like little bits and pieces and spurts of him, and when we do, he's really cool. His short story is fantastic. Him showing up in Siege of Orgrimmar is awesome. It's a really cool scene. And then he's like stealing goblin technology as he's leaving. I think that's really funny. War Crimes, he basically doesn't show up. He's there at the trial. It's not a spoiler because he doesn't do anything. He's there at the trial, but he doesn't do anything. He's just there. So they need more to just develop him as a character. I guess that's the cop-out I'm going to use for some of these other future picks. For the dwarves, I think Moira needs to be the uncontested queen of Ironforge, like her rightful place is. And then just make her continue developing her, because she's a very interesting character. I kind of dislike how they toned her back from her more villainous tendencies, like she had in The Shattering, where she comes across like almost as a full-blown villain, but she's really not. She's kind of an anti-hero. But they've been then in 5.3 toning her back to being like, yay for the Alliance, when really she should be like, fuck the Alliance. They prevented me from getting my rightful place in Ironforge. So they need to just elevate her to be the sole queen. The whole point of the Council of Three Hammers was to get the people accommodated to Moira and help her learn how to be a leader. And I think in 5.3 we do see her being a leader. She basically says the Bronzebeard and the Wildhammers are being fucking stupid for not standing against the Ice Trolls. And she shows up herself with her own people and takes care of business. I think that means that should show she has enough experience now to be the sole queen of Ironforge. So for the Night Elves, Malfurion just needs to die. I don't want him any part of the leadership. I think he's an entirely boring, terrible character. He's a Mary Sue. I can't stand him. He needs to go. Tyrande, they've been making her better again. I'm not going to get into that because it's more War Crimes spoilers, but suffice it to say, she is awesome in War Crimes. But if it's not Malfurion and Tyrande, the immediate person is Chandras. Chandras Feathermoon needs to be the leader of the Night Elves. She has the military experience. She's kind of like Skyrim Marauders, really. She won't take shit from the Horde, but she has wisdom, and she knows how to lead. And I think she'd be a really good faction leader. So, there you go. So that's the four first races of the Alliance. Then we have, the Draenei. If Velen just dies in our universe, then just have Nabundo, I guess, be the leader. I think it'd be cool for the Draenei having a Broken as their leader. That'd be nifty. I'm not going to say Vindicator Marad because I still don't think he's an interesting character. We'll see what they do with him in Warlords of Draenor. But from the comic and from Wrath of the Lich King, he's not really interesting. He's just kind of a Draenei paladin. So I think the Draenei, it'd be interesting if they had a leader who wasn't like so attuned with the light. Like Velen is like, the light's the best thing ever. And Marad, he might be like jaded, but he's still a paladin. I think it'd be cool to have a shaman Broken as their leader. I think that would have some very interesting connotations. So, for the Worgen now, I don't know how this would ever happen, but Lorna Crowley needs to become the queen of the Gilneans. She is like one of my favorite minor characters in all of the lore. And if you guys played the Worgen Starting Zone, if not, you can watch it on my channel. I played the whole thing. She takes care of business with only a shotgun. Like she takes down a Horde airship by herself and the player and like two other people with a shotgun, and then crashes it into the Forsaken's base. She's fucking awesome. I think she really needs to be developed more, and make her the queen of Gilnean, whatever, who cares. Pandaren I'm not going to count because they don't really matter. So let's get to the Horde. For the Orcs, if it's not Thrall, and I hope like variant Thrall just somehow dies, in this version Thrall's dead, so bye. The Orcs, I guess the typical answer could be Sarfang, or who else but Sarfang? Nazgrim would have been a good choice before he became evil, or not evil, before he died, following Garrosh misguidedly. I'm gonna go with Nazgrim. I can't think of any other interesting Orcs. Let's live Wikipedia-ing with Necroxis. Orcs. Notable Orcs who are not Thrall. Or Sarfang. And Wikipedia shows a bunch of dead ones, so good, thank you. Drekthar, he can't be. He's senile and basically dead anyway. Garona is never really part of the Horde. Even though she is in Twilight Highlands. All these other people are villains, so I guess we're going with Sarfang. So, Starfang, congratulations. So for the trolls, again, they suffer from the same problem other than Vol'jin. They don't have a lot of interesting characters. So, let's look at the troll, the Dark Spears. Who else could be a leader in their group? We have, Vol'jin. I'm looking at the list of notable Dark Spears. There's Vol'jin. There's his father, who's dead. There's Shadowhunter Rokhan, who was in Frozen Throne, and really didn't make an impact, but then was in Wrath and also really didn't make an impact. Master Gadrin, who they tried to make a character in Shadows of the Horde, and really isn't because he's boring. Zalazane's dead, and he's a villain, and that's about it. So, sorry trolls, you're stuck with Vol'jin. I know I'm copying out here, but I'm trying to find out just interesting characters for each faction, and it's hard. So, for the Tauren, I don't know how they could pull it off, but I really love Magatha Grimtotem. I think she is a fantastic villain and a character. And even though she does scheme and then successfully is able to kill Cairn, I don't think she's actually full-blown evil. I just think she's definitely not morally good. She's obviously not, but I don't think she's 100% evil. I think it'd be interesting to have another race besides the Forsaken with a leader who is definitely more towards the bad side than the good. So I don't know how they would do it. I don't know how. I guess Bane would have to be dead because there's no way he'd have any of that shit. And I don't know how the Tauren would work like that. She'd have to enslave them or something. But I think it'd be really cool to have Magatha Grimtotem as the leader of the Tauren. Other than that, who else can we pick? Let's look at the leaders. Or the important Tauren in this list. None of these matter much. Cairn and Bane, they're both dead in this situation. Hemul Rune Totem, he's part of a neutral faction, so it can't be him. And then you just have some advisors to Bane. So yeah, it had to be Magatha. So Magatha. Sorry, Tauren. You are now subjugated under Magatha Grimtotem. You're welcome. Now let's look at the Forsaken, and definitely not Sylvanas because I can't stand Sylvanas. She really needs to be dead by now. Other than that, the problem is they haven't really. The problem with the Forsaken is that when they develop the Forsaken, that means they develop Sylvanas. They don't really develop the Forsaken as a whole. We have a few glimpses at the Forsaken society. For example, in Sylvanas' short story, if she is still dead when she commits suicide, then Master Apothecary Farinel becomes the leader somehow, and he kind of leads the Forsaken to ruin. But I still think it'd be cool to have a Master Apothecary as the leader, or maybe Nathanos Blightcaller, who was the champion of Sylvanas, the first human hunter, or the first human. What was it? Farstrider. What was it? I'm having a mind blank. He was the very first human Farstrider, I think. Yeah, Farstrider. And then he became her champion. So it'd be cool to have him. Lillian Voss, somehow. I always say Lillian Voss, and people are like, but she doesn't even like the Forsaken. True. Somehow she would have to be finagled into being the leadership. I think she'd be a cool leader. And finally, and the most sad, is I think a great leader for the Forsaken would be Putris, but obviously he's dead because they introduced him and made him a villain and killed him off way too soon. He could have been an amazing character. He had such potential, and then they just threw him away like a Team Rocket villain. But so if I can't pick Putris, I will pick I'll pick Lillian Voss because I think she's interesting, and I think we need more female, some more cool female characters who aren't just eye candy for the lore. So Lillian Voss, and now we move on to was that the fort? Yep. So the goblins. This one's really easy. Gallywix sucks and is boring, so he's gone. Bilgewater Goblins. I know who I want to pick, but I just want to see the other possible choices. Bilgewater Cartel. So Gallywix is gone. Sorry, Gallywix. There's not even a list of notable ones, are there? Now I'm forgetting. Sassy Hardwrench is who I would pick. She is a major character in the starting zones of the goblins. She goes from being the player's personal assistant to being, if not the de facto leader, then one of the highest ranking Bilgewater goblins in the starting zone. She helps you escape from the volcano when it's exploding. She creates all of these things and helps you along the entire way. After that is done, she goes into Southern Stranglethorn and like makes her own base. I actually thought they were going to make her the faction leader. In a perfect world, they would have made the player the faction leader, because you're kind of like, you know, the savior of everybody. But if you couldn't pick the player, you picked the one who helped them the most, which is Sassy Hardwrench. And I really think they should have made her the leader of the Bilgewater goblins, because she has the stereotypical goblin traits, you know, which is kind of like making money and ingenuity and stuff. But she also cares about her people, which is something Gallywix just fucking doesn't. And he never should have been the leader in the first place. I've always wondered if they kind of ran out of development time when they were making the Goblin starting zone, and they got to the very end and they maybe had set up Sassy or somebody else as the leader, and they're like, we ran out of time, fuck it, just throw Gallywix in there. And then they just made that scene with no voice acting and just typed out all, "You're going to still be the faction leader even though you tried to enslave your race," and Gallywix is like, "Yes, Thrall, yes, Thrall." And it was just really silly. So Sassy Hardwrench is who I would have picked. Someone else who actually was a fan-created character that they then put into the game was Boss Mida, or Boss Mida. I don't remember how they pronounced it. She actually, is she still in Orgrimmar? I think she is, yeah. She's in Orgrimmar. They don't really explain a lot about her. All of her stuff is a fan-created character, so I guess let's just read a little bit about it. Boss Mida is a character inspired by the Trade Princess movement, which was when people lobbied to get the leader being a woman, a female, a trade princess. They nominated the entirely fan-made character Mida Silvertongue to be trade prince of the Bilgewater cartel. Her title is Her Tallness, referencing the tallest from Invader Zim. She's also called the Boss. That's why in the game she's called Boss Mida. And so she'd be pretty cool if not for Sassy. They'd have to develop Mida a little bit more as a character, but so it'd either be her, but my first choice would be Sassy Hardwrench. So, I just skipped right over the Blood Elves. My bad. I really like Lorthamar. I don't want to have to like replace him, but if I did, my immediate first choice would be Lady Liedrin, the Blood Knight captain or lieutenant or commander. I forget what she is. Her title is the leader of the Blood Knights, the first Blood Knight. I really disliked how they changed her at the end of Burning Crusade, where they made her, initially she was more vindictive, and she kind of was like, I'm going to take the light, I don't want the light to be granted to me. And then they totally got rid of that after they reinvigorated the Sunwell. And then you see her in Wrath of the Lich King during the Quill Dalar quest chain, and she's like insanely preaching about the light, like exactly how Velen would. And I was like, they just ruined that character. They made her entirely boring. Again, she's showing up in Warlords of Draenor. We don't know what capacity. We don't know how she's going to act, but I think she'd be the original version of her would be a really cool faction leader for the Blood Elves. Because she still cares about her people, but she's a little bit more ruthless than Lorthamar is, and I think that would be interesting. So, I think that's everyone. I'm also ignoring the Pandaren, because they just don't matter. So, I think that was all of the questions I was asked on the video. Yeah, so that was a very long question, so thank you, Calyx XC. That inspired me to think about who I think should be the faction leaders. So, alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this Q&A video. As I've been going on, I've been progressively sweating more because it's Illinois in the summer, and it's very high humidity, and it's 90 degrees outside right now, so yeah, I look gross. But, thanks for watching. Submit more questions on this video if you want. If I get any, significant amount, I'm probably going to do another Q&A video at some point, so keep watching. Thanks. Submit any questions you might have in the comments below, and I will see you at the end of this week for the War Crimes review. Thanks a lot, everyone. Farewell.